Hello everyone, let's discuss today's The Hindu editorial page. The first article is Growth Charts, Whose Standards versus India Crafted. In this article, the writer says that the issue of child undernutrition in India has been a persistent problem with multiple determinants including food intake, dietary diversity, health, sanitation, women's status, and the overall context of poverty. Most common measures of childhood undernutrition are based on anthropometric standards, such as height for age, stunting chronic undernutrition, and weight for height, wasting acute undernutrition. Monitoring these is key to tracking progress in terms of actual outcomes. India uses the globally accepted World Health Organization (WHO) growth standards to measure malnutrition. However, there is an emerging debate on several issues related to the use of these growth standards in India. The WHO standards are based on a multi-center growth reference study (MGRS) conducted in 6 countries between 1997 and 2003. The purpose was to determine the pattern of growth from birth to 5 years of children who did not face any known deficiencies in their environments. The references used were previously used on children only from the US, many of whom were not breastfed but formula-fed. The MGRS took a prescriptive approach, setting growth standards, how children ought to grow provided they have a healthy environment, and not growth references, how children of the reference group grow. The sample for India in the MGRS was drawn from a set of privileged households living in South Delhi, of children who met all eligibility criteria for the study, including having a favorable growth environment, being breastfed, and having non-smoking mothers. Some researchers suggest that these standards overestimate undernutrition, but such comparisons with other large datasets would only be valid if they could provide samples that met all the criteria of a favorable environment for growth, as defined by the MGRS. Adequate numbers of equivalent samples are difficult to find in large-scale surveys in India due to high levels of inequality and underrepresentation of the rich in these datasets. For instance, even among children, 6-23 months, in households of the highest quintile in National Family Health Survey, NFHS, -5, 2019 to 21, only 12.7% meet the requirements of a minimum acceptable diet, as defined by WHO. For example, the MGRS included a component of counseling to ensure appropriate feeding practices, which is obviously missing in the NFHS or Comprehensive National Nutrition Survey. Once it is understood that the MGRS sample was for the purpose of setting prescriptive standards, most sampling concerns are resolved. Further issues raised vis-à-vis the MGRS methodology include pooling of data from different countries, which has been discussed in detail in the study reports. Genetic growth, other concerns, and the use of the MGRS standard are also important considerations. In conclusion, the issue of child undernutrition in India is a persistent problem, with multiple determinants contributing to its prevalence. The use of the World Health Organization, WHO growth standards, and the MGRS standard is a controversial approach to measuring malnutrition in India. The next article is The Quest for Happiness in the Viksit Bharat Odyssey. In this article, the writer says that Viksit Bharat, the initiative aiming to make India a developed nation by 2047, is an ambitious goal that has been met with criticism. The focus of development planning in Viksit Bharat is on structural transformation, labor market organization, increasing competitiveness, improving financial and social inclusion, governance reforms, and seizing opportunities in the Green Revolution. However, this vision may not fully fulfill India's ambitions and desires. The current idea of Viksit Bharat needs to be reimagined to assess other aspects of development that would be more important for India. Happiness should be the central pursuit in this journey, as without happiness, development has no meaning. Many developed nations have poor happiness markers, while some have achieved both in a balanced way. India's ranking 126 out of 137 countries, ranking 126 out of 137, raises questions about whether India will have a better rank in the happiness index in the coming years. Happiness measures have become the goals of public policy in many countries. Since its inception in 2012, the World Happiness Report has developed a robust method to measure and calculate happiness. The report includes 6 variables: GDP per capita, healthy life expectancy at birth, generosity, social support, freedom to make life choices, and perception of corruption. The report places extra emphasis on trust and benevolence in crisis situations such as COVID-19. Social connections are key, as reported by Lara B. Aknin, one of the co-authors of the Happiness Report 2023. The report found that acts of kindness have increased globally despite the pandemic, economic crisis, and personal losses. The report also highlighted the importance of social connections and relationships in contributing to happiness and well-being. Finland, Denmark, Iceland, and the Netherlands are the happiest countries, with these countries having the highest levels of happiness and well-being. The report also highlights the need for India to reimagine its approach to development and happiness to ensure it aligns with the country's long-held ambitions. The next article is unjust and unwise. Counterinsurgency in J&K must not target civilians indiscriminately. In this article, the writer says that in Jammu and Kashmir, J&K, security forces face a significant challenge in combating terrorism and counterinsurgency operations. The Pir Panjal Valley, comprising Poonch and Ramajuri districts, has witnessed violent encounters between security forces and militants, leading to the deaths of 28 soldiers this year. The death of 3 civilians and 5 others injured due to alleged torture by security forces is a severe indictment of counterinsurgency tactics there. These actions increase the unpopularity of a regime that has not been democratically elected in the Union Territory, where provincial elections have not been held for over half a decade. The region has been experiencing military activity in the last 2 years, causing discontent among residents. The aims of militants in asymmetric warfare against Indian security forces are to provoke them into committing rights violations against civilians and use grievances and indignation to increase their support base. The legitimacy of force or violence and its use by the state depends on the justness of the actions. Indiscrimination in the use of violence targeting civilians without just cause only results in the questioning of that legitimacy in the eyes of the people. The J&K police have registered a murder case against unidentified persons following the deaths of the civilians, and the army has taken 3 senior officers off their posts while promising an inquiry. Both agencies must now deliver justice quickly and in a firm manner.